Thank you, Hilda.
The introduction video was really cool.
Oh, that was so funny.
Nei, ok, þú segir bara til. Hvernig maður þýðir þetta, Grump-O-Meter svolítið gott. Það var bara mæðumælir var ég að hugsa.
She was talking about how to translate Grump-O-Meter.
Oh yeah. Yeah, say it and she translated it.
Yeah,
Já, þetta
Yeah, you have to say it in the translation, Kurrkvarðinn.
Yes. Magnús, hann slapp upp á þessari þýðingu og mjög flott. Því líka, það er svona það að því maður við notum gleymur þetta.
Það er mörg orð farið.
Sæl öll, verið velkomin í Hannesarholti og þið sem heima sitið verið velkomin á þetta streymi. Við erum mjög ánægð með að geta boðið upp á visku hennar Janet í Kaufman. Við erum svo heppin að fá hann hingað til Íslands. Hún er gestur okkar hér í Hannesarholti þessa vikuna og she's a friend of a friend. Hún er vinkona skólabróður míns frá Bandaríkjunum og hún hélt hérna fyrirlestur á þriðjudaginn sem við vorum svo heitluð af að við ákvaðum að streyma honum í dag. Móðir hennar, systir hennar og hún bjuggu til þetta frábæra tól sem kallað Grump-O-Meter. Og þá er spurningin hvernig þýðir maður þá íslensku. Það komu ýmsar tillögur, mæðumælir. Við enduðum með þýðingu sem Kurrkvarðinn frá honum Magnúsi Halli hérna uppi. Og það sem heitlaði okkur svo mikið við þetta tól það að þetta notar 4 liti og með því að nýta þetta getum við hjálpað börnum og líka okkur sjálfum að í staðinn fyrir að bara springa af reiði eða ergelsi eða vera allur á iði af einhverjum erfiðum tilfinningum, stoppa eins og átt að sjá, heyrðu, hvaða litur er ég? Er ég kannski gulur? Þá þarf að athuga málið, get ég farið niður í rólegheit í bláan eða er ég að fara að springa? Og við höfum trú á þessu tóli. Janet hefur hjálpað mjög mörgu fólki í Bandaríkjunum í gegnum þetta tól, bæði börnum og fullorðnum og þannig að við þykjum hennar visku, hún mun segja ykkur meira frá sjálfri sér og deilum þessu sem víðast og hjálpum til að gera samfélagið okkar bæta samskipti, gera samfélagið okkar rólegra og þroskaðra í tilfinningunum okkar þannig að við getum hjálpast að róa okkur og vera betri hvert við annað. Janet. Gjör svo vel.
Oh, I don't.
Please. Oh, sorry. You have your own.
So first, Raga, thank you for hosting me here. It's so wonderful to be here, and I love sharing this work. I've shared it across the United States and in a few other countries, actually, and it's been very, very important to me personally. It's been important to me as a teacher, and more recently I have been working in mediation and conflict coaching, and I work with families and couples sometimes. I work with organizations, and I work with the homeless community, I work with the refugee community, small businesses. Everywhere I go, people need help with communicating about their most basic feelings and needs. And everywhere people struggle with how to communicate when they get upset and how not to act out behaviors, but instead to express their genuine thoughts and feelings so that we can communicate more peacefully. So that's my work. I started off my career as an English teacher, and I noticed right away that when kids are upset or they're worried about something, they're not learning. They're too busy concentrating on what is happening inside of them. So as a teacher, I wanted to find ways to help kids relax, come to a calmer place, and be able to focus so that they could learn. And then I had children, and then when my children were about 2, I needed a little help. And this has been an incredible tool. So I hope that it's meaningful to you, and I'm grateful to be able to share it. I have a few slides but this is the main tool. I like to invite everybody to make their own Grump-O-Meter, and so I have some models for you to make your own, but I made this one, but it's wonderful when everybody makes their own. And you can see here a couple examples. This was a grandfather and a granddaughter together in a school where I was working. And this was made by a teenager, this was made by an adult, and this was made by these two in the middle. So in other words, it's for everybody, no matter what age you are, no matter what role you play in life. We're all human beings with feelings that can get difficult, and we all want to be able to manage them so that we live in this world more peacefully. For me, and I thank you for your patience with English. I'm so impressed that everybody that I meet in Iceland speaks English. And I wanted to share some of my favorite words with you about the Grump-O-Meter. So if it is a tool for safety. When we're on calm blue, we're relaxed, we're open, we communicate clearly, we're helpful. When we explode on red, like a volcano that might explode here, we're in a danger zone. And so we can go from this place of calmness to danger very quickly. And this Grump-O-Meter is about taking the steps slowly so that we prevent going to this place, because once we get here, like the volcano, once it explodes, there's nothing to do about it except to get out of harm's way and keep everybody safe. So if we can prevent the climb, we're much safer. So to express, to listen, to be curious, and find compassion. So often we judge people on the outside for their behaviors without understanding why they're acting in a way that's difficult for us. We don't understand, and we judge, and we sometimes respond harshly instead of compassionately. So this is about trying to imagine. We cannot always understand another person, but trying to imagine what could be happening for this person that they're acting this way, and how can we help them, or how can we help ourselves? So to develop awareness and consciousness, you know, I'm seeing a staircase over here. If we take the stairs 5 at a time, we jump from here to here, it's trouble. If we can trip, you know, we're like, and if we can go 1 at a time and see ourselves, have awareness, or see that someone else is going up, we might be able to step in and come back down that Grump-O-Meter. I hope that the Grump-O-Meter helps us communicate with connection, with understanding, to touch each other, so we have some tenderness between us, to learn, to grow, to live with acceptance, belonging, creativity, and peace. That is really what's at the heart of this. For me, it's not just about like having a poster on the wall. I love these. These were done by children. This child wrote, about 8 years old, "When I am on blue, I like to act the nicest I can. I also like to play with a friend." You know, when we go up here, we're not playing with friends anymore. And this, I ask kids often to draw their faces on the different colors. What does your face look like on each color? And they know. They'll say, "My mother looks like this," you know. Or they'll say, "I look like this." So they know what we look like. They know that our bodies tell us. We can look at someone in a second and know if they're upset, if they're happy, if they're in a good mood, if they're in a bad mood. So, but instead of having to guess, and we say in English, walking on eggshells, being very careful when we know someone's upset. So instead of having to guess and to walk so carefully, we can say, "What color are you on?" Or, "Ooh, I think they're on yellow. I'll stay away, that's it." Let them calm down. Okay, here are a few Grump-O-Meters. This one was made by a child of age 4, and this is by her father. So this was a family that was using it together. This was by a police officer that I worked with. I worked with the police at one point because in the United States we have police in the schools. They're working with kids. People are upset when they see the police. They get nervous. So to sensitize the police to all of this is there's a lot going on with that in the United States. This one was made by a teenager, and these 2 children were about 10 years old. So really, just want to say it's for all ages, and there's no one way, but I always like to have these colors in this order to emphasize that it's not about I'm not talking about particular feelings on each color, but the intensity of each feeling. Can we measure how strong our feelings are? And because we could be frustrated here, feel a little frustration, but we could be frustrated here and really be having difficult behaviors. So it's about the intensity, the strength of the feelings. I just wanted to show you these to give you ideas for any of you who work with children, maybe in a school or in other settings. This is a kind of fun activity, but just to have them imagine what are the different pictures they might draw to represent each color and different words. So kind, good, fun, work together, friendly, loved. This is how people experience blue. And then on green, you might be a little irritated, a little mad. Here's the girl saying, here's someone stuck in the tree at the top. I will help you. So scared, frustrated, right? And these are just like a little scared, a little frustrated. But we know that when people's fear becomes very, very strong, we can be here in a second. So yellow, I think of yellow as the yellow light on the street, or the check engine light in the car, where you want to really slow down, because if you speed up you can get into trouble quickly. So slow down, look around. Here's your chance to really look what's happening inside of me. Can I take a break and slowly find a way to come down? And there are many, many things we do. Everybody has things that they do to calm themselves down. You can go on a walk, you can take a deep breath, you can talk to a friend, listen to music, right? All of these things, but we can't do that unless we notice that here we are. That's the first step. So this question, what color are you on, is always the first step. Oh, whoops. Oh, there's orange. I love at the top it says rethink and stop. One teenager wrote the orange square with a police car, because she thought, oh, if I go to orange, the police are coming after me. You're in trouble. So stop on orange so that you don't go to here. And then here's red. In English, we say if you lose your head, you go to red. So don't lose your head. Here you still have your head. You can still think. And you can give messages to yourself. Stop. Go down. You're on orange. Whatever you say. And sometimes people ask me, well, where is the best place to keep the Grump-O-Meter? I say, in your head. Have it in your head. It's nice on the wall, but it's better if it's here. Okay, this was a poster we made from kids drawing their faces on each color. So if you're working with children, this is a fun exercise to do. Okay, so I want to give you this. And I think, Raga, you'll have copies of this, so people, if they want, they can access it. But this you just fold, and then like this, and then you have a little brochure, And on the front you have mine, but on the back you have yours, your Grump-O-Meter. So you can draw this, and if you want to make one out of cardboard, I always tell the kids 4 lines for 5 squares. Little math. But on the inside, you have some very basic little instructions for how to use the Grump-O-Meter. And when my children were young, I kept one everywhere. I put one on the low on the refrigerator so that they could, when they were 2, they could see it. And then higher on the refrigerator, I put one in the bathroom. I put it in the car, because that if they started to fight in the car, I would say, look, I'm getting upset. I'm going to yellow when I hear fighting in the car, and I am the driver. I have to be safe. I'm pulling over until everybody's on blue again. So nobody's in terrible trouble. We just have to be safe. And it helped. So I loved having it in the car. Okay. I'm not a scientist, and this is an artistic portrait of the brain, so it's not, don't look to this for scientific, factuality. But the idea is that we are absorbing experience in our brains all the time. It's coming through our brain, all of our experience. Sometimes we have, when an experience reminds us of, if it feels dangerous, or if it reminds us in our unconscious of a scary, frightening event, we might have what we say in English, a fight, flight, or freeze reaction, a very strong reaction where we might lash out in a fight, we might run away, we might not know what to do, but our brain is processing this. And this Grump-O-Meter, the idea is that it can create awareness so that we can help ourselves pause, take a breath, and not go to that worst, most severe reaction. The science is telling us that extreme experiences or very difficult traumatic experiences in early childhood shape the brain. That this, for instance, is a neuron with many connections, many healthy connections, and here you see the neuron with fewer connections. So a brain that's experienced what we say in English toxic stress. And so the idea with this Grump-O-Meter is that we can use it to help ourselves, to calm ourselves from very difficult situations, so that our brains continue to develop and continue to be able to take in new experiences instead of getting stuck and not developing in the ways that help us live in a healthy way. So this matter of emotional regulation is so, so important to our basic human development. There's much more to say about that, but I'm going to go ahead more to the heart of the matter here. This is a just basic idea that comes from nonviolent communication, which is a school of communication that's become internationally, there's an international movement for nonviolent communication. It was started by a man named Marshall Rosenberg in the United States, and who was a psychologist and also lived through personally experienced some of the trauma of the 1960s and the race riots in the United States, and worked diplomatically all over the world in communities. And he thought there has to be a way of kind of simplifying our understanding of helpful communication. So he said, among other things, 2 things about feelings that we experience and the basic needs that we have. And that is that feelings are universal. We all have feelings all over the world. In different cultures, we express them differently. We have different attitudes about how to express them, different cultural understandings of them, but we all have them. And they signal something important to us. Our feelings are communicating to us. They're trying to call our attention, you know, like an alarm going off in the morning, like, hello, I'm here, I'm upset about something, will you pay attention to me? But often we get the idea in childhood that, I don't know how it is here in Icelandic culture, but you know, we often get the idea that our feelings are bad, they're not, we shouldn't express them. We say sometimes, don't cry, you don't need to be sad about this, don't get angry about that. We have lots of different attitudes about feelings, and we learn that it's not always maybe a good thing to express our feelings or even to have them. So the idea here is that they're all valuable, they're informing us about important things, and we can pay attention to them. And also human needs are universal. We all have needs. We're born with needs. We're born with the need for, we need to be, when we come out of the womb, we have to be dressed, held, fed, changed, burped, loved. And we know if we don't experience love, for instance, we don't grow, we don't thrive. So our needs are absolutely important. They are what makes us human. And yet often we're told, you know, you shouldn't say that. You shouldn't act like you need, like you're so needy. We say that in English. You don't want to look needy, because then people might not want to be around you too much. So our needs reflect the values, the longings, the desires under our feelings, and they are really like a life force. So I want to share with you this page. And again, this is, make sure maybe this can be connected to your website. Yeah, okay. So, and for those of you who work with children, there's one that's a little less complicated, just fewer vocabulary words. But, hold on. Going ahead a little bit. Okay, that's it. So at the top of the page, you see words for human needs. And this is the one for children, just a little simpler, but we all need air, food, water, shelter, the most basic things. We need choice, we need safety, we need to play, to be creative, to explore. We all need friendship, kindness, reassurance, comfort. These are the most basic things that we need to feel okay in the world. So when we meet our needs, like all of these needs, right now I'm, really happy here. People are here, it's friendly, I had a good breakfast, right? I walked this morning, my body feels good, everything's okay right at this moment. I'm on blue. But if you were sitting here and you were making uncomfortable faces at me, and I was thinking, oh, they don't want me here, I'm not welcome, I might start to feel a little insecure, I might need some reassurance, I might need some kindness, and I'm going up the Grump-O-Meter because those needs are not met. So when our needs are met, we have these nice feelings that are on the left side of the page. And when our needs are not met, we start going up the Grump-O-Meter, and we're here with all of these difficult feelings, scared, suspicious, worried, and in my body I might feel, my stomach might start to be in knots, I might start to get a headache, or my face might start to turn red. And so it's a signal something's not right for me. I'm going up because my needs are not met here. So something happens, like you make a face that I think is not a kind face, right? I get worried, my need is for reassurance, I'm going up the Grump-O-Meter because it's not met. It's like this basic equation. So if you're a teacher and your students are not behaving well, you might ask, what needs are not being met? I had an interesting experience working with a school that had a dance program. And all the children once a week went to dance class. And the teacher asked the children to take off their shoes to dance. Well, this one class never wanted to take off their shoes, and they always said they didn't like dance. So the teacher finally gave them a chart. I don't have it here, but a chart. And she listed all the activities they did during the day, like math, English, science, lunch, recess, dance. And she asked them all to write what color they were on during each of those classes. And they put blue and green for, here for most of the classes, but on dance, they put red. And everyone wondered, why are they on red during dance? And no one knew, and they were children, they were like 7 years old, so they had a hard time saying, but they could say that they were on red and dance. So they didn't know, but the teacher knew they didn't like taking off their shoes. And she said, okay, for a while, everybody just keep your shoes on during dance. And all of a sudden, they started to like dance. And they started to participate. And after a while, the teacher said, would everybody be willing to try taking off their shoes? Now, by this time, they had trust in the teacher. They felt more comfortable. And so they were willing to take off their shoes. But we didn't understand why. Why don't they want to take off their shoes? The only thing we could really think was that this was a school where there were a lot of children living in poverty. And our guess was that their parents had said, don't take off your shoes. You only have one pair of shoes. Don't lose your shoes. You need your shoes. That was our guess. We couldn't really know. But and so the principal said to the dance teacher, just help them out. Just make them more comfortable. It doesn't matter if they don't take off their shoes. They're not growing up to be ballerinas here, It's okay. So the idea that if we can hear that, oh, they're on red in dance, let's try to instead of being mad at them, like the dance teacher was getting very frustrated with them, instead of being frustrated with them and mad at them, let's try to understand what's going on with these kids. And let's try to work with them. So that's what this is really about, in this matter of needs and feelings. I want to take you back just a few. Okay, so these are some of the feelings that we have, right, when we start to go up the Grump-O-Meter. And down here we feel loved and cared for and content and important and peaceful. But we start to go up, we might be a little annoyed, a little irritated, a little frustrated, a little grumpy. And we can ask ourselves, and then at the top I wrote words like humiliation, hopeless, fury. I don't know in Iceland, I haven't done the research, so I don't know how high the suicide rate is here. Do you have a problem with suicide? We have a big problem in the United States with teen suicide and suicide in general.
We do. I think it's pretty high, and also use of like antidepressants is pretty high compared to other countries.
Okay. So my mother developed this tool, and then I started working with her, and we wrote a book together about it. But before I started doing it with her, she was doing it, and she was a social worker working with children and teenagers. And many of whom, she was working for a while in a hospital where mostly teens had attempted suicide. And over a 10-year period, she would ask them, after they were in the hospital and they were calmer, she would ask them, when you were thinking about suicide, or when you did what you did, what color were you on? 99% only one person over 10 years said, so more than 99%, said that they were on red when they were thinking about it or when they did it, when they tried it. So this was a huge, huge message to us that if we can prevent this climb to red, we can help somebody before they're in danger. And sometimes people ask me, what's the difference between orange and red? And the difference is that on orange, you might be very upset, but on red, like I said before, you've lost your head. So, one time I was talking to a teenager who said, I'm living on, I said, what color are you on? She said, I'm living on yellow. I thought, oh, that's very severe. If you're living on yellow and you cannot find your way back down, we have to help you right away to help you find some calmness. And there are many, many things we can do. There are many places to ask for help in society. And there are many practices we can do. We can do meditation, and we can do yoga, and we can listen to music. But we can also, there's medication, and there are therapists, and there are schools, and there are many resources. But we have to pay attention to this. Because sometimes you just have a bad day and you're here, but sometimes you're having a bad month or a bad year, really a difficult time. If this can be a language, and we can say, oh, that's important, let me pay attention. Then we can really start to help each other. So this question of where do we feel our feelings in our body? Because our feelings, there's this kind of, I'm not a scientist or a doctor, but the research seems to be telling us that there's a very strong communication between the thoughts that move through our head, the feelings that we have in our body, and then how we interpret those. So we often know from our bodies first. Before we think, oh, I'm upset, our stomach is aching. Or adults get backaches, children get headaches, tummy aches. They go to the school nurse, oh, I have a tummy ache, right? And something's happening for them. They're not actually sick. They don't have a virus, right? But they're upset about something. There's some need that's not being met, or there's some feeling that's not being expressed or heard. So these body cues, this was from an app, like tap on the part of your body that gets where you feel your feelings, just to have awareness. And these are some of the words we have in English for where we feel. Like sometimes you see someone like doing this with their brow, and you think, oh, they're worried about something. Or you feel your heart racing. Or you get very hot, like, oh, I have to take off my sweater, You're experiencing something in your body, and you can pay attention to it and say, use your page for a minute, what need do I have right now? Just for a little self-compassion, a little self-empathy. Oh, I'm really I need a friend right now. I'm needing some compassion. I need some attention. I need to be heard. I need to be seen. I feel like nobody here in this room is seeing me, right? That's just a basic human need. Okay, just so that I know it. Now, once I know the need, I can try to start meeting that need. Okay, with kids, again, if you're a teacher, or if you're a parent, or if you work with children in some way, or if you're an artist, right? I invited kids to draw their bodies and then draw where their feelings are in their bodies. So these were kids who were all about 10, 11, 12. And these were children actually that I work with in the homeless community in my town, in Boise, Idaho. So this one wrote a little key for her, a little code for what each color represents. But all of this is to create awareness. Oh, I'm a person. I have feelings. They're okay. They live in my body. And it's beautiful also, isn't it? So, okay, I always like to ask, what's the trigger or what's the stimulus that takes us up the Grump-O-Meter? And that's like the need that's not met, but often it looks like I'm hungry, I'm tired, I have to do math in school, now I have to do reading, it makes me nervous, I feel stupid, so I'm worried, you know. Everybody's playing out on the playground and they're leaving me out. I don't know how to be included. Inclusion is a huge need for human beings. Belonging, acceptance, right? If we don't feel like everybody's chosen for the soccer team except me, nobody chose me, that is huge for us. Takes us right up the Grump-O-Meter. People's opinions that we disagree with, right? We can start to get nervous inside, like, oh, what am I going to say to that? That's, you know. Or even something that happens that takes us back in our memory to an earlier time in our lives. So I like to think, what's the spark that ignites in you? If any of you, again, are working with children, one exercise I do is have them draw their hands. And one hand is outlined in red or yellow, and one hand is outlined in blue and green. And then I say, draw marks around your hand, like for the red hand, that remind you of feelings on yellow, orange, or red. And on the blue hand, draw lines that make you feel peaceful and happy. And they draw like soft and curvy lines, right? And here you see the harsh lines of the yellow and red. And then in each finger, draw something that takes you up the Grump-O-Meter. So here, being ignored, being left out, seeing others being bullied, insults, lying, that all of those things take this child up the Grump-O-Meter. And we can imagine what are the needs. For those things, the needs are honesty, acceptance, respect, caring, inclusion, right? All of those needs are not being met in these situations. So I hope you're getting ideas for art that you can do with people. And again, these are just, if you're working with children, just some playful ways to show needs. Because, you know, just to give kids the idea that we all need these things. You're not special because you have these needs. Every single one of us has these same needs. And we all have to find ways to meet them. And sometimes we find different ways. And sometimes we have conflict about the ways that we're trying to meet these needs. But the conflict happens through the strategy. It's not about these needs. Because if you say to me, well, I really need peace, I have no argument with that. The argument happens when you say, well, the way I'm going to find peace is by playing my music really loud. And I say, no, that is not okay for you to do that. I need quiet. That's my way of finding peace. Right? Then we have a conflict. So we have to negotiate what we're going to do. But the need itself is not a problem. Okay, so I showed you this. I love these. So the kids I work with made these paintings. And in nonviolent communication, we use the symbol of the giraffe and the jackal. The jackal's like kind of like a wolf or a coyote. It's an animal of an animal of prey. It preys on, right? It hunts for food. It attacks. And so the jackal is like, I have my puppets there, but I didn't bring them here to Iceland. But the jackal, I do this for the jackal. The jackal is the animal that is harsh, that criticizes, that judges. It says, what are you doing? I don't like when you do that. You didn't get dressed nicely today. You didn't speak nicely in class. You don't help at home, right? All of the judgments and the evaluations. And the giraffe is the voice of compassion because it has a huge heart. It has to pump blood all the way from its feet up to its head and down. And it also has, when it eats from acacia trees, which have big thorns. So it has to soften the thorns, and it has a chemical in its saliva that softens the thorns so it can chew and swallow. So it's a question, how do we soften the thorns that come at us? When people speak to us in ways that are so harsh, how do we soften that? And so we sometimes have to translate the difficult message of the jackal into the soft, kind message of the giraffe. And to say, oh, you didn't like the way I spoke to you. Are you wanting some kindness? Are you wanting some softness? Okay, I can try that again. You know? So when we can try to meet other people's needs, or we can try to meet our own needs with kindness, everybody is happier, and we come down the Grump-O-Meter. I have this chart because here we have behaviors that are difficult for us, and this came from my work with teachers, but I think it's relevant for everybody. We all see difficult behaviors, like somebody is not following the rules, or somebody is seeking attention. Often we say of young children, they're just seeking attention. They want attention. Well, that's not a bad thing. Everybody wants attention, right? But it sometimes looks disruptive. They're seeking attention in ways that are, you know, you're teaching kindergarten and a child is doing something to get attention and it's disrupting the whole class. And the jackal gets upset and says, that child is rude. That child is inconsiderate. That child doesn't know how to behave. That's a very common response. But we could say, if we're guessing from the giraffe's perspective, what feelings does that child have? We can't necessarily ask. A young child can't always tell us their feelings. They don't have the words, or they don't know how to get it out in that moment. But they might be feeling a little lonely, or scared, or frustrated. And what do they need? We can only guess. They might need acceptance. They might need a little love. They might need to really learn something. They might be frustrated because they don't understand. So if we can think, instead of thinking, oh, this child is rude or not paying attention or disrespectful, what's wrong with this child? What's wrong with their parents? Why didn't they teach them right? Then, and we can think, what might be happening in this child? Is this child lost or bored or frustrated or hopeless? Then we might think, oh, yeah, they need some community. They need a sense of community. They need acceptance. They need some soothing, some comfort. They need just some patience or time, right? Then we can start to react in a different way. We react very differently if we think, oh, this child is frustrated and needs some help, versus that child is so difficult. Our responses are very different. So when you change the way you look at things, the way you look at things changes. Okay, this is just the most basic thing we can do to help ourselves when we go up the Grump-O-Meter, which is to breathe. Just to pause before I react, before I say something, before I do something. Let me just pause, give myself a moment. And we can do that as parents, as teachers. Children can learn to do it. If we can teach children to do this, we are giving them a gift. And we do it in all kinds of ways, like hold up your hands and blow out the candles. Each finger is a candle. Now we've really taken some exhales and maybe started to calm ourselves down. Smell the flowers. Breathe with a buddy, with a little stuffed animal. You can hold a stuffed animal and put it on your belly and watch it go up and down and up and down, and that already starts to be calming. So for adults, we have I learned this from a doctor. to breathe in for 4 counts, hold it for 4 counts, breathe out for 4, and hold it for 4. And it starts to regulate, there's scientific studies done on this, it starts to regulate the nervous system. So this is just the most basic tool, but there are so many.
I also like the box breathing.
Yeah, yeah. They really have done there's been research on it. They see the nervous system start to calm down.
Can you
With it.
explain it? I'm sure everybody knows the box breathing.
Yeah, so just again, you breathe in for 4 counts, hold it for 4 counts, breathe out 2, 3, 4, and hold it for 4 counts. There are there was a book that came out a few years ago called, I think it's just called Breathe. And it was James Nestor did a huge journalistic scientific study of breathing and how the different kinds of breathing that people do for regulating the nervous system and the effect that it has on the body, and it's quite remarkable. Their medical effects, the body often begins to heal with regulated breathing, and the impacts seem quite real and observable. So the more we can share this with teachers, do it in families, do it in classrooms, the better we all are. I just wanted to show you a few of these. I love the Grump-O-Meter art that people do, and I just want to invite you all to make your own Grump-O-Meters. These were by parents and teachers, and not everybody's is so neat and perfect, and you don't have to be an artist. Sometimes kids just scribble the colors very roughly, and that's good too, as long as they feel connected to it, that it's theirs, they drew it, and we can ask them about it. For those of you who are teachers, I want to share just a little personal story. When my son was in kindergarten, he's now in university, but he was, I don't know what he was doing in school, but the teacher thought he wasn't, behaving so well all the time. And I said, well, let's just have him color the Grump-O-Meter. The kindergarten was from like 8 in the morning until 2 in the afternoon. So I said, so how about at 10 o'clock and 12 o'clock and then before he comes home? He has a little notebook, and on every page at each time of the day, those 3 times, he just colors the color that he's on right then. And then if you have any message to send me, you write it in the notebook, and he brings the notebook home. And I made a little Grump-O-Meter, and I tied it onto the notebook, and it was his special book. And every day for about a month, he did that. Every day, 3 times a day, he wrote what color he was on. And at the end of the month, the teacher said to me, he's behaving so well that I don't think we need to continue this. I said, okay, but I kind of wanted to continue it. I thought it was a great thing, And one day he said to me, on the way to school, we always had a little bit of time and we would stop at a park and play for a few minutes. And he said to me at the park, I'm going to be on blue today. I thought, this is amazing, that at 5 years old, a child can think about his mood and plan it and predict how he would be. And he's now such a steady person. I'm not saying it was all the Grump-O-Meter, but it created a kind of a pathway for thinking. And that he could not just react in the moment, but actually plan, how am I going to be today? And how will I conduct myself? How will I behave? Sometimes inside we look very calm. Outside, we can look at someone and I can say, oh, you look really happy and calm. And inside you're thinking, I'm so nervous. I don't know how I'm going to get through the rest of the day. Or I'm so upset. But you're hiding it, right? You're not showing it on the outside. So we can inside be here I mean, outside we can be here, inside we're here. And people don't know it. So if we can get honest about recognizing our needs and meeting our needs and expressing our feelings, we can start to bring these together. But we get into danger when we don't know on the outside that a person feels this way. And so we have no idea, we're not able to help them. So if we know, if somebody can say, I'm on yellow, I'm kind of having a hard time, we can say, oh, give them a hug, just be there for somebody. But we can't do it if we don't know. So this matter of communicating is so, so important to us. I just wanted to share this with you, just again for ideas, for those of you who might want to do something creative with this tool. We have a community center in my town, and they had this idea of making a huge Grump-O-Meter. It's 6 feet tall, I don't know in meters how tall, maybe about 2 meters. And it's this wide. And they put it on a stand and a little stool here with stickers. And they asked everybody to put stickers for the color they were on when they came into the building. Just kind of for a fun thing to do, to see, there are some people, I don't know how upset they really were when they walked in, but they said that. Now down here we saw a lot of blue stickers. And then there was a community dance program that created a Grump-O-Meter dance. And they performed it in the building, and you can see they had these red, to represent the red, they had these red scarves that they draped over themselves. So that was just the night of the dance. But there's so many ways that you can make and share this Grump-O-Meter. And these were some pictures of it in schools. And again, you can see the playfulness here. Here's the volcano. Just here was different fabrics. Here they drew faces and bodies. This one is in Spanish and English because we had in the school where they have a lot of Spanish speakers, different shapes. So, but always this is the question: what color are you on? And this was just more. I'm just trying to give you ideas, for what you can do. They just cut out animals and had a good time. And here you see the very calm, happy turtle, and up there the exploding lion or whatever it is, the angry lion. Here's the shark swimming happily along, and there is the shark ready to prey, on up at the top. So I always like to ask, what do you do to get back to blue? How do you calm yourself? How do you help yourself? And it's such an important question for everybody to keep finding ways to do that and to keep practicing that. And the parts, the way we do it is all in our body. It's all in us. Often we're waiting for someone else to help us, and we can help each other. But we also can help ourselves. We can see something differently, like turn around, see it. Yesterday I went to Snæfellsnes, and we saw that a big mountain that they take you to, I can't remember the name of it, but when you see it from one side, it looks like it's flat across the top. And when you come around from the other side, it looks like a mountain peak, like very sharp, very pointy at the top. Looks completely different when you come to the other side. So we can see things differently when we move into a new angle. We can hear things differently. We can really listen. What am I really feeling? What do I really need? What does he really need? Can I guess? Because I might not completely understand, but can I try to guess and try to help? We can listen with our hearts. We can even put our hands on our hearts to calm ourselves down. That's a very nice thing to do. Let me just, and breathe. Our lungs are in there, trying to help us. We can walk away from trouble. Walk away from something that seems dangerous to us or scary. we can just smile at somebody, or smile because the science now says if we smile, we feel a little better. It cheers us up to smile. You know, we can hold out our hands to help. I like to say hands are for helping, they're not for hitting, they're not for hurting. They're for helping. So, and with our whole bodies, we can exercise, we can run around the block, we can jump up and down, and right, we can, with our whole body, we can make ourselves feel better. So the tools to help ourselves are within us. They're not out there, it's not magic out there somewhere, it's within us. And I always like to ask this question: what is the benefit of being on blue to you? Why is it worth coming back to blue? Because we all laugh when we're together, or we feel better, or we have a good time, or we go to a movie together, or we, you know, I'm more helpful, I have friends, people like to be around me when I'm on blue. It's worth it to get back down to blue. Not just superficially on the outside, but, you know, on the inside. And that's a really nice question to ask, even if you're teaching. Why is it worth staying on blue? Well, if we stay on blue together, we'll get to have a party at the end of the week, or we won't have to take that extra test, or whatever, you know. But there's value. Okay, these are the things in case you need reminding at the end. I just want to remind you, first, this Grump-O-Meter is for safe and efficient communication. I cannot always say to you, oh, I'm tired and I'm a little worried and I'm anxious, but I can say, right now I'm on green. Just give me 5 minutes. You know, it's just safe, it's efficient. I can feel empathy for you or for me. You know, like, oh yeah, this is hard. Okay. I can accept that. I can inquire, what color are you on? What's going on for you? You look like, I can see something doesn't seem quite right on your face, you know? What's happening for you right now? Empowerment. People feel stronger when they can control themselves. They feel capable. They feel competent. You know, when my little 5-year-old said, I'm going to be on blue today, I thought, oh, wow, he's taking care of himself. He's managing himself. That feels good. We build relationships. We problem solve together. We can't solve problems when we're here. We can fight, but we don't solve problems. But here we solve problems. We have a phrase in English, restorative practices, where we restore connection. We allow people to be heard and understood, to repair, to forgive, to make things right. This allows all of that kind of communication. And in schools in the United States, we talk about positive behavior intervention, where we're really working on positive behaviors and not focusing on the negative ones. So I just am ending with these two drawings done by an artist who I love, who's from my city, the city I grew up in, Kansas City, Hugh Merrill. And he, blue face and red face, and there's so many things to see in a piece of art. But one thing I see in this is that the red face is covered. You know, when you've gone to red, you can't see. You know, when the volcano's exploding, you're not seeing that mountain clearly. All you're seeing is the fire. And when you're on blue, you can start to see the shades, the tones, the nuances, you know. Maybe there's like all these blues have different feelings, represent different feelings, but we can see it. So that's what I have to share with you today. I hope that you'll make Grump-O-Meters, that you'll use them wherever you are, wherever you work or live, with people you love, with people you know. And I'm just wondering if anyone wants to ask a question.
I really like the story you shared with, am I heard?
Oh, okay.
Sorry. Thank you. I really like the story you shared with having that Grump-O-Meter in the car, and also when you said to the children, I don't feel good anymore, I'm not on blue, I need to be on blue in order to be a safe driver. And by doing that and pulling over, I think you are, it's like empathy training, because then they have to put themselves in your shoes and figure out, okay, it's not safe for her and it's not safe for me and my sibling to sit in this car if my mom is feeling, if she's running up a Grump-O-Meter. So then they have to step out of themselves, step out of the situation, and sort of start to put themselves into your shoes.
Right, and the contrast to that would be, you terrible kids, you're always fighting in the back seat. What's wrong with you? Stop it, right? That would be the jackal speaking. But the need is, I need safety. And that's where the empathy is. That's right.
And the other thing would be to speed up and drive recklessly,
right,
to show your anger,
right,
which
and
some
scare.
of us have been tempted to do.
Right, absolutely.
Yes,
Absolutely.
yes, yes.
Absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
I just want to say thank you for a phenomenal presentation or reading.
Thank you.
And the need for practical tools regarding emotional regulation, they are dire. I'm studying to become a kindergarten teacher, and this is something I see every day, and this needs to be introduced, well, first on the teacher level, and then the kids, and not least the parental level.
Yeah.
That, because yeah.
So first, thank you for saying that. And one important thought about that. This is a kind of language that we can speak. Just like you're speaking Icelandic to your children, I'm speaking English to my children. They learn language because we speak to them, because we're doing it. They're watching us. They're seeing our mouths move. They're seeing our throats move. They're hearing our tone of voice. They're learning the vocabulary. And they, after about 2 or 3 years, and even by 5 years old, children have mastered the grammar of their language. I also have studied grammar. But they've mastered grammar by the age of 5. We know that because of the mistakes they make. When they make a mistake, we know, oh, they're thinking the rule is this. And so you'll see, when you pay attention to how children speak, it's kind of amazing. Right, but if we speak this language, if the teachers use it, if the parents use it, if I can say to my children, I'm on yellow, please let me have a few minutes of quiet in the kitchen before you come in, right? Or if a teacher can walk into the classroom and say, I had a really hard morning, I almost got into an accident on my way to school, please, can you just read your books for 5 minutes while I take some breaths and come back to blue? They learn that. Not right in the first minute, but they learn it. I was once in a 4th grade classroom, so the children are about 9 and 10, and the teacher asked them to turn in their papers, and they all rushed to her, and they were standing around her in a circle, and she said, I'm going to yellow, please back up. And the kids, as soon as she said, I'm going to yellow, they started to back up like this. And everything calmed down. So it's remarkable. I saw another teacher in math where she asked the children every day to write what the homework was in math, what they did or didn't do, and the color they were on when they did it. And by that, she started to understand which kids were really frustrated and needed more help, which kids were understanding, and she put them in different groups, and she started helping them differently. And some days she was revising her lessons because she thought, these kids are frustrated because they're ready to move on. These kids are on green because they don't understand. And she started to divide the groups according to what she understood from the color that kids were on when they were studying.
What a useful tool.
Yes.
One more thought that came up on Tuesday. Someone here shared that she'd always thought she was such calm person, and signifying that she was always on blue, until she grew up a bit and realized that's how she was on the outside. But really, she wasn't in touch with her feelings that were bubbling inside. But the facade, the face she showed to the community was blue. Can you comment on that?
Yeah, I think it's very common because none of us wants to show a face like this to the community. And I guess I don't need this, do I? I don't need, yeah. I'm okay, you can hear me? Yeah.
You just want to be heard.
Yeah. Right, we don't want to show this face, and we know there are consequences for this, and we become ashamed of our feelings. Sometimes we learn that it's not okay to express our feelings, and we don't know how to do it in a peaceful way. And so we're scared of those feelings because we think if I show my feelings, I'm going to show them in a hurtful way. I'm going to upset somebody, I'm going to offend somebody, I'm not going to be liked. We don't know how to communicate those feelings, and so we keep them inside. So I love this, that's why I love this page that I gave you. Can I just hold it? This page. Because if we can say calmly, wow, I'm really worried right now. There's nothing wrong with being worried. Who isn't worried sometimes? We all experience worry. I'm really worried, and I'm just wanting to just hang out with you for a few minutes because I know it will relax me to be with a friend. Okay. Or I'm really worried and I know that I need some help and I don't know where to find it. Maybe I can, confer with somebody, ask somebody, who's the right resource for me, right? But we don't share because we get scared that we don't know how to share. So if we can have a language that says, oh, there's nothing wrong with me. I'm not a bad person for having these feelings. This is human that I have feelings and that I have needs. I don't know how to express them in a way that is not hurtful because sometimes people have seen feelings be very scary. Sometimes we grew up in homes where people yelled or they hit or there was a kind of violence in the home. Then we learn to be scared of our feelings. We don't know how to express them without hurting somebody. So does that speak to your question, Raga?
Yes. And I also wonder if we are in this place, keeping up the blue, calm appearance while we have normal feelings inside that we don't let out. Yeah. I imagine it must be bad for our health, bad for our hearts, because we have internal stress.
That's right.
With no way of letting it out.
Right, and there's a lot of research that speaks to that, right? We know that heart attacks, that even certain diseases are related to stress, and that doctors now are doing a lot of teaching about stress reduction. It affects sometimes people have knee trouble or, whatever, they have heart trouble, they have, even sometimes serious illnesses, the scientists are thinking, oh, there are relationships to stress. So it's very significant.
So feelings that aren't let out.
And sometimes
make us sick.
When we don't know how to express our feelings, we take them out on other people, but sometimes we take it out on ourselves. And we hurt ourselves. And so people look okay, they're treating other people well, but they're not necessarily treating themselves with the best care.
So I should have met you before I had my knee replacements.
I don't know. I'm not. But we know that pain gets worse with stress, right? I mean, everything is worsened by stress. So, yeah.
Thank you so much.
Thank you for having me, and please share this and do something with it.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Can we translate you?
Yeah, I would love love that.
The discussion came up on Tuesday.
Yeah, I would love that.
Now, this is definitely a tool that needs to be heard, seen, and understood here in Iceland. Because like there is this really prominent disconnect. I mostly agree with what Raka said, that there's this disconnect
No, I just said.
with the emotions.
Are we off? Or?
I'm working.
No, are we offline or are we on?
Oh, no.
Okay.
No,
Okay, then I'll stand here.
That I see it on the school level that I work on, that there is this disconnect with emotions, that kids might be so hyper-stimulated and overstimulated that they're just like, when, how am I, in a sense. But they, and this permeates throughout, like, from the staff, the teachers, the school office staff, and this just goes
Right.
down throughout the whole,
Right.
yeah.
Right, and we often have at least I can only speak for the United States, but we often have a culture of punishment, right? Where if a child is not behaving well, we punish them. You know, when I was working with a school in Salt Lake City, where I used to live in Utah, they had a lot of suspensions, meaning that when children misbehaved, they required them to not come to school for like 1 day or 3 days. Like they behaved so badly that they sent them out of school. And this principal, when the principal started working with the Grump-O-Meter, the first thing she did was to bring snacks into her office. And when a child misbehaved badly, the first thing they did was to bring the child into the office, give them a snack, and let them sit there for a little while until they started to, calm down. And then she would talk to them and ask what was happening. And then she would bring the parents in and they would have a conversation. And then they created a place in the school, one room, where if children were really having a hard time, they would go and they would sit in that space and they would do art or they would talk to somebody. There was always a teacher or a staff there, right? And the suspensions went from, I don't remember how many there were a year, to almost 0. That everybody was staying in school, which is so important because when kids are out of school, it's not good for anybody. So, yeah. So this has been this inquiry, like, okay, and then they had when children came into this, when children were sent to the office, they had to fill out a little chart that said what color they were on, what was their trigger. I had a couple questions on it. I can send it to you if you want. Right, they had to draw their body. Where do they feel their feelings? And that was before they talked to the principal. So she would give them a snack. They would fill out this page, and then they would talk to the principal when they were calm, because there's no talking on red. But the punishment stopped. And then then children start to feel included and accepted and safe, that they know they're in a safe place, they're not going to be punished. And sometimes children are coming with stresses from home. There's something happening at home that's creating stress. Sometimes it's internal. Sometimes they have I don't know how you say it in Iceland, but they have anxiety or they have ADHD or they have, something where they have a lot to learn about regulating themselves. Sometimes there's, economic stress, all kinds of things.
On that topic, I was diagnosed with social anxiety, and just a few incidents with teachers in before kindergarten and in kindergarten. They shamed me for doing things that I couldn't control, like blinking too much.
Yeah.
I just had sensitive eyes. And for not speaking, because apparently I had selective mutism. So just because of those incidents, I think I was stuck on yellow pretty much my whole childhood.
Yeah.
And even today, I'm super sensitive to criticism.
Yeah.
And I take it very personally.
Yeah.
So even just I had a good childhood, nothing serious happened, but just like,
People's reactions to you.
yeah.
Based on just who you were, how you were wired, how you were born, right?
Yeah, so I always second guess myself and
Right,
trust other people more than myself, and
right,
always
Right.
think I'm doing everything wrong or not
right,
well enough.
right.
So yeah.
Yeah, thank you for sharing about that, because the impact of those reactions when we're children can be so long lasting. Yeah. Yeah, thank you for sharing.
In the majority of cases in Iceland, you will see people of the same generation as me and Hrafnhildur. We had a good childhood. We had a really nice upbringing. We had a lot of opportunities, a lot of support to do just about everything we wanted. However, like, life has all these small dents that it gives us.
That's
and
right.
being helped through these small incidents that become these dents in our self-image and stuff.
Right. We can't, everybody has things.
Yeah.
Every person has events, troubles, stresses. We cannot prevent that. We can prevent how we react to it.
Exactly.
Yeah. 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 Thank you for wonderful questions and for welcoming me and welcoming the Grump-O-Meter. And
Thank you for
Yeah.
bringing it.
yeah.
Kurrkvarðinn á Íslandi. Kurrkvarðinn.
Yeah, I want to see it in Icelandic.
Yes, let's
Definitely.
do it. Let's do it.
Definitely. Yeah.
Setta hér.
Yeah.
Okay.